Not quite Indiana Jones. Archaeology and me in southern Illinois. What does it take to find out about the past? I went to the Center for American Archaeology Field School to find out. Turns out we needed tools, sweat, patience, and a tolerance for mud. Every morning, we loaded up a truck and carried everything to the shelter from our dormitories. When we got there, we grabbed our tools and headed out to the field. You might know that archaeologists work in layers. By assigning something you find to a certain layer, you can try to figure out what time period it came from. In our dig, a layer was 10 centimeters. It was arbitrary, but it helped us to keep track of the relative age of the artifacts. When you start a new layer, you take a soil sample to check for the type of soil by color and consistency. You also take a larger sample, 10 liters at our site, for later analysis as a float or flotation bag. You'll see more about that later. After we were done, then we could really start to dig. We started a layer with one partner digging with a shovel. The dirt went into a bucket. When the bucket was full, the other partner screened the dirt. We stopped now and then to measure the depth of the unit. It was important to make sure that we weren't digging too deep, because if you go beyond 10 centimeters in one spot, you'll have to make the entire level deeper, and that's a lot more digging. To measure, stretch a string from a post that marks the ground level. One partner puts a level on the string and checks it, while the other partner notes the depth in each corner of the unit and in its center. Getting close to 10 centimeters? Then we would start digging with a trowel instead of a shovel to avoid getting too deep. Meanwhile, the other partner was screening the dirt. This involves pushing the dirt through a screen and retrieving and recording anything that is too big to pass through the screen. Partners generally switch off from task to task just to keep things interesting. You might find ceramics, shells, tools, or just a bunch of pebbles. When you measure and find that your unit is the depth you want it to be in every spot, you need to start your final scrape. This involves going over the entire surface slowly and carefully, making it as smooth and even as possible. Then you can get a clear photograph of the unit for future reference. Trowels should always be sharp, but you'll need an extra sharpening for the final scrape. When the surface is as perfect as you can make it, photographs of the level are taken. Notice the sign that gives the location and date, and a north-south pointing arrow. Then you destroy the perfection by taking a soil sample, filling a float bag, and starting to dig again with a shovel. So what is it all for? In 5 days of digging in our unit, this is what we found. 11 pebbles. Pretty depressing, right? But it turned out they aren't really pebbles. 6 of them are blobs. They're little balls of clay that result from the pottery making process. 2 of them were flakes of chert, material used to make tools and other sharp objects. So why bother? I joined this field school because I wanted to know how archaeology worked. I found out a lot, even though I didn't find much in the unit where I was digging. I found out that not finding things is often as important as finding things. Why? Here, for example, we now know that this was not part of a home, a living unit. That's important. We'll have to look elsewhere for that information. We also found out that someone during the woodland period kicked or dropped or threw those little bits of garbage where we were digging. That's part of their story. But wait, is that it? A few pieces of garbage in a week? There's a lot more to archaeology than digging. The mud needs to come off of the artifacts before we can see what they are. The contents of every bag of artifacts are labeled, washed, and then bagged again when they dry. See the rope marks on the pottery? I didn't get to dig it up, but I got to clean it. That big bag of dirt we filled at the beginning of each layer gave me another chance to see some interesting artifacts. We washed the soil sample through a strange contraption made from a large oil drum. We put it through a large screen and then a smaller screen to find artifacts that were in the soil. In addition, we found things you'd never see just by looking at the soil, like seeds, important in knowing what people ate. Finally, we had to examine, weigh, and classify every single object we found. That was another chance to see all the things that weren't in the unit where I was digging. So, in the end, I helped find and clean bones, knives, tools, shells, and ceramic, as well as digging up my bits of chert and blobs. Some tiny part of our knowledge of indigenous life in Illinois is available because I was out there with my friends in the hot summer sun for a week. Not quite Indiana Jones, but not bad.